So welcome to today's webinar, Redefining the Employee Experience. My name is Chris Barrera, and I have almost 20 years of payroll and HR administration experience. This experience includes managing and directing human capital management systems, implementation and service, as well as business process outsourcing. That includes end-to-end HR and payroll. I hold certifications from SHRM and HRCI, as well as a certification from the Project Management Institute as a project management professional. And I have over a decade of experience training HR and admin professionals in various webinars, conferences, and seminars. Little housekeeping for the webinar. You'll be muted throughout the presentation. Please chat any questions during the webinar. There are a few poll questions. We ask that you please participate. And we will share the results with you. And I am looking for somebody from the audience to please confirm that they can see my screen and hear me on the webinar. This presentation is not legal advice. It's not the final word on today's topic, as we have limited time to go through all of the topics we have today. And of course, this is not a political opinion. Today's webinar is good for one PDC for both HRCI and SHRM. We also recommend that you log into your portals regularly with these associations and enter your PDC with an approved activity number provided with your certificate. If you have any questions about recertification, please visit the SHRM or HRCI website, or you can email me directly at chrisb@hubengage.com. All of the participants today are recorded electronically, and their total time participating is documented. Full participation is required. Each participant will receive both HRCI and SHRM certifications, or certificates rather, for attending with the required information that has the activity ID and the CE credit. So redefining the employee experience. Here are the objectives for today. Today, we're going to be walking through redefining the elements that contribute to an overall employee experience in the workplace. We have many reasons to blame the pandemic for the issues we've had over the last few years with engagement, hiring, retaining and recruiting talent. The fact of the matter is, while we still hold on to a few of those issues, we must discuss what the new normal is and how we will adapt our organizations and HR shops to deal with all the elements of the employee experience. Today, we will discuss what is the employee experience, employee engagement revisited. We'll discuss why we're focusing on the employee experience, employee experience trends, and employee experience best practices. So this takes us to the first poll question of today. And the question is the employee experience tied to employee engagement? So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll and let everybody answer. So please, if you would please answer the poll. And again, I was looking for confirmation on that you can see and hear the presentation, but it looks like you can because you're answering the poll. So glad to see that. All right, so yeah, it looks like an overwhelming yes. I got one no, and that's fair. So let's talk about that. I think that the employee experience is very much tied to employee engagement. Ultimately, I believe that that's the ultimate score that revolves around the whole employee experience, and that's how that holistic approach to what the employee feels about the employee experience. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's included in that and how it all fits together. But just a really quick question that I want to ask is, and if you could please in the chat, what is the definition of redefine or redefining? And if somebody could, put that in the chat, what's your opinion? Or you can look it up, whatever works for you. What's the definition of redefine? All right, so I just ended that other poll. So to redefine, the definition of redefine is to change the meaning of something or to make people think about something in a new or different way. Another definition is to re-examine or reevaluate, especially with a view to change. What we're saying is that in redefining, we're re-examining and reevaluating the activities and strategies that we may already be doing around the employee experience. So redefining the employee experience really is not something completely new, but it's really re-examining and re-looking at it and trying to figure out how we improve the employee experience. So what is the employee experience? The employee experience includes everything that happens in the total employee's life cycle. How employees were interviewed, how they were onboarded, the organization workplace environment and the technology they use, how employees interact with management, their managers and their overall well-being and out of the well-being and out of the workplace. According to Gartner research, only 13% of employees are fully satisfied with their experience. The last few years following the pandemic have certainly changed the way everyone thinks about work. We just followed what we call the Great Resignation, and we're very much continuing that trend, but we call it something a little bit different. Now we call it quiet quitting. This is why, as organizations and HR professionals, we must understand what will define the employee experience as we move into the future. As employees demand better life-work balance and flexibility to attend to work and family, a recent news story reported that 40% of companies are planning to move to a 4-day work week. There is no doubt a reaction of redefining the employee experience. Employee engagement revisited. I believe that employee engagement, as I mentioned earlier, is still the determining factor in winning our employees over and earning a designation as a great place to work. I think it's very important to revisit what employee engagement is and why it's important. While the terms employee engagement and employee satisfaction may sound sort of like the same thing, they're actually quite different. Yes, employers should try to make their workers make sure that they're both engaged with their jobs and satisfied with their work. But if they wish to truly build a strong workforce, they need to understand the difference between the two terms. Here are some brief definitions. Employee engagement is something that occurs when workers are committed to helping their companies achieve all of their goals. Engaged employees are motivated to show up to work every day and do everything within their power to help their companies succeed. Engaged goes beyond the job description, described as determined, taking the initiative, and adaptive. Employee satisfaction is the state of a worker enjoying their job, but not necessarily being engaged with it. Imagine the employee who gets to show up to work early and leave late without ever contributing anything or breaking a sweat, but just taking advantage of the time clock. Satisfied employees are content and happy, but not necessarily engaged. Here are some definitions of employee engagement from various sources. Wikipedia says that employee engagement is a fundamental concept in the effort to understand and describe both qualitative and quantitative the nature of the relationship between an organization and its employees. That's a handful there. Gallup, on the other hand, says that engaged employees are those who are involved, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work in the workplace. And I think that's a very simplistic definition. SHRM has a definition that says that the term employee engagement relates to the level of an employee's commitment and connection to the organization. And then lastly, Forbes has a definition that employee engagement is the emotional commitment the employee has to the organization and its goals. So we can truly see that employee engagement is about feeling, it's about emotion, it's about being involved with the organization, having shared vision and understanding, and definitely goes deeper than just employee satisfaction. So why focus on redefining the employee experience? According to a workplace study, engaged teams achieve an increase in productivity by 18%. What we're saying here is if your workplace or your teams, your people, your employees are engaged, that companies share a employee productivity by 18%. Companies who have engaged employees can increase their profitability by 23%. If you can increase your employee retention by 43%, you can increase your employee well-being by 66%, and you can increase customer loyalty by 10%. And of course, that ties back to profitability. But having an engaged employee can really bring back a lot to the financial aspect of an organization, taking care of them and taking care of your customers. It is estimated that in the U.S., disengaged employees cost organizations around $450 to $550 billion each year. Disengaged workers take less responsibility and ownership for their attitude, behavior, and motivation, and they drain overall productivity. The study recommends that companies focus on encouraging personal agency and that they use tools to monitor and maintain personal engagement. Engaged employees are enthusiastic about their job. So let's just take a look at this chart here and kind of look at the differences, right? And I'll just spend time talking about engaged employees versus focusing on the disengaged employees. But the engaged employees are enthusiastic about their job. They display positive energy. They smile when they work. They're not only happy to be there, they feel like they belong and are contributing to the organization. Engaged employees are committed. They show up to work on time. They rarely call in sick, and they're looking for opportunities to be better at what they do and be better at their jobs. Engaged employees are unselfish. They stay late if they need to. And when they don't feel like, and they come in when they don't feel like it, even if it's easier to call in sick. Engaged employees have great attitudes. They're happy to be there, and it shows. They're willing to step in and help out a fellow team member or help with a project, even though they already have plenty of their own assignments. Engaged employees go the extra mile for the team and are reliable, especially for your customers. And then lastly, engaged employees collaborate and share information. They want others on the team to be successful, and they care about how we deliver as a team. So let's talk about some employee engagement trends in 2023. Now, over the last few months, we brought you quite a few courses in different aspects of employee engagement and what's happening in the workplace overall. So I think it's really important to really kind of understand what I think some of the drivers are today that will be inhibiting or make challenges, for your employee employee experience. Every year, Gallup puts out a survey, actually several surveys and reports on various employee topics. In their 2022 State of the Global Workplace report, Gallup reported the following survey responses. While we were only primarily reviewing the US and Canada and their results, there were scores for all parts of the world. That's something that you can go out and grab on the web and download the full report. Here are some key metrics that I want you to consider. In the US and Canada, only 31% of employees are actually engaged at work. And while this has improved slightly over the last year, this is one of the biggest indicators for us to focus on employee engagement as a primary strategic HR initiative in 2023. We still have huge opportunities to improve these scores in our organizations. What was interesting is that Gallup took this information and they broke it down into various aspects. Now, what I'm going to mention with you today are just a few of those, but I think that this is what's really driving the employee experience in our own organizations and in our corporations, and why we're seeing some of the downfall that we've seen over the last couple of years. The first part is only 60% of employees say they are thriving. And the question gets into a little bit of more detail, but basically what they're asking employees is if they're able to take care of all of their needs, right? And that means financially, well-being, and others. And only 60% of employees say that they're thriving. Now, globally, those numbers are much lower. So US and Canada have much higher rates. But again, we're focused on US and Canada today. 41% say that they experience daily worry, okay? 50% say they experience daily stress. 18% say they experience daily anger, and 22% say they experience sadness. So what's really surprising or alarming about these numbers is that some of these percentages are pretty high. So not only are employees less engaged at work, but there are contributing factors that really, at the end of the day, come back to mental health and well-being, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation, but I want you to look at those statistics for a little bit and keep them in the back of your mind. All right, so here's a quick chart, and I wanted to just kind of show you where we are for 2022. 2023, of course, just started, but you can see that those numbers are down. When it comes to employee engagement in the US, in 2022, employees reported feeling less engaged in the workplace than in previous years. Coupled with the continuing exodus of the Great Resignation, and now what we call quiet quitting, human resource professionals have their work cut out for them as they try to retain employees, according to this recent report. Just 32% of employees across the nation are engaged at work, according to the work done by Gallup. The early 2022 survey found that 68% of Americans are not engaged at work, and that 17% of them are actively disengaged. So the chart here shows actively engaged and disengaged, but the 68% you have to factor in or don't fall in either one of those categories, right? So those numbers are actually pretty much higher than what's stipulated here on these charts. So let's talk a little bit about well-being in the workplace, because that's another statistic I think that's important to understand. The employee perception, according to this Gallup study, is that organizations do not actually care about their well-being. That's what employees say. According to Gallup, 20%, only 1 in 4 employees feel like the organization cares about their overall well-being. This is considerably down from mid-2020, when we were in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, where 49% of employees felt that the organizations cared about their well-being. Employees who strongly agree that their employees care about their overall well-being in comparison to others are 69% less likely to actively search for a new job. They're 71% less likely to report experiencing a lot of burnout. They're 5 times more likely to strongly advocate for their company as a great place to work and to strongly agree that they trust the leadership of their organization. They're 3 times more likely to be engaged at work, and 36% of them are more likely to be thriving in their overall lives. So there is a huge correlation in employee perception between how employees feel that the organization truly cares about their well-being. And then really at the end of the day, this is about the actions, right? And our processes and procedures and how we act with our employees regarding their well-being. So what's important to employees in 2023? So there's a lot of research out there. SHRM came out with their workplace study for 2022. And ironically, these 4 were in the top 5 for important issues for employees. But employees want flexible and remote work opportunities. Allowing employees to work flexible schedules can help retain valuable employees. Without a doubt, flexibility is one of the most important perks workers want from their employers. When your workforce is engaged, they spend more time on their work and less time looking for new opportunities. Flexibility also means working remotely part or full time. This is also a great employee perk. Studies show that this is one of the top 3 factors that candidates now look for in an employer. They're looking for that flexibility, or they're looking for that opportunity to work remotely from home. Work-life balance. The days of working late, working tons of overtime, and equating that with productivity is a misnomer. Employees are looking for organizations that are not only providing flex and remote opportunities, but are truly embracing the work-life balance. Some employees are moving to 4-day work weeks, 8-hour flex days, no overtime, no weekends, and healthy paid time off benefits. Managers also need to promote a work-life balance and also lead by example and work to truly achieve this with their employees. The work-life balance is very important to employees in 2023. Support for mental health. The pandemic shined a light on the impact of mental health can have on a company. Over the last 2 years, with possibility of another recession looming, employees need to know that you care about their health. It's clear to see why organizations should focus on employee well-being in 2022. The reality is that when employees feel that companies understand the importance of wellness and well-being, it shows their employees that they're committed to supporting them on a personal level. It fosters loyalty, connection, and improves the overall morale of employees. And then lastly, what employees want in 2023 is great workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. Great workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion are important key factors to improve business results and employee engagement. When people feel a sense of belonging and they feel their ideas and feedback are welcomed and valued, they are more engaged. Several research organizations report that diverse and inclusive cultures are more profitable and return more value to their shareholders. All right, so let's take another quick poll. What was the employee engagement percentage for 2022? And let me grab that. All right, so if you guys could answer that poll. All right, very, very good. Yeah, so there's a little bit of variations, and I did show you some scores from the prior year and forward. So the actual answer is 34. So for 2022, the engagement percentage for employee engagement was 34%. All right, very good. Thank you. So what challenges in 2023 are we going to have for the employee experience? And again, I did review SHRM's report on the status of the workplace. And this was a survey around what HR professionals and executives and employees think about the employee experience and what some of the challenges are. And again, very much in line with just pretty much what's already out there. I think none of these are going to be earth-shattering or new to you, but I think that they're going to continue to take front and center roles in how our employees feel and how we address these concerns and issues, right, in the workplace. The first one is just the continuation of inflation. This inflation for 2022 came in at 6.5%. You can see that over the last few years, inflation started, late 2021. We saw some really high numbers. These are averaged out for the year, but we saw some percentages as high as 8.5% in March of 2022, which is kind of the height of inflation. And the Department of Labor reported that this was the highest number since December of 1981, published in some data that they reported back in April 12th of 2022. The current annual inflation rate for the United States is 6.4% for the 12 months ending January 2023, after rising 6.5% previously, according to the U.S. Department of Labor. This was published December 14th. The next inflation update is scheduled for release on March 14th. While we've seen some relief from the middle of 2022 on all cost of goods, inflation is still a real concern for all employers as we come into 2023. While the rate of increase may be slowing, inflation's dramatic rise over the past year has clearly taken a toll on workers who are shelling out more for expenses, including housing, groceries, gas, and medical costs. Not only is inflation increasing financial stress, it's causing workers to be dissatisfied with their salaries. And employees also say inflation and recession concerns have affected their career and financial choices, with many looking for higher paying jobs or side gigs to earn extra cash. Recent news and reports and other experts say that salaries have been increasing more than usual as a result of inflation. And while the employee and why this is also still an employee-driven job market. Consulting firm WTW, for instance, found that U.S. employers plan to boost salaries on average of 4.6% in 2023. That's up 4.2% from the previous year. Other reports find that salaries are increasing. A report from salary.com, which surveyed 1,000 HR professionals, found that nearly half of U.S. employers plan over the next year to increase their budgets compared to 2022. And consulting firm Gartner found that 63% of executives plan to make compensation adjustments in response to high inflation. So this is something that definitely should be on your radar. I think inflation is not something that new to us or that we don't understand, but it's still something that I think we have to deal with in the immediate future and should be part of our strategies for addressing the employee experience, having budgets for raises, addressing the concern of inflation, and really having a plan and a solution if you can. Now, we buckle that with, there are many companies that are still having to buckle down and don't have the freedom to maybe raise salaries as much as inflation. So there definitely going to be challenges, right, for some organizations as they try to address this. I think the biggest factor that we're going to continue to see in 2023 is a tight labor market. I don't think that that's changing. For the first part of 2023, it was pretty eye-opening to see what's been happening. Now, the ultimate goal of the Feds was to raise interest rates, lower consumer spending, increase unemployment, and those things really haven't worked. We continue to see these record numbers that we saw, some of them from pre-pandemic days. So the total non-farm payroll employment increased by 517,000 in April. We saw some numbers that were pretty spectacular in 2022, but you can see the trend over the last few months, and we had quite a big spike in new jobs for January 2023. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, job growth was widespread, led by gains in leisure and hospitality, professional and business services, and healthcare. The unemployment rate remains at 3.4% in January, and the number of unemployed persons was essentially unchanged at 5.7 million. The unemployment rate has shown little net movement since early 2022. Both the labor participation rate at 64.4% and the employment ratio at 60.2%. These measures have shown little change since early 2022 and remain below the pre-pandemic February 2020 levels, 63.3% and 61.1% respectively. Now, the labor force participation rate is an important metric because it analyzes employment and unemployment data, and it measures the number of people who are actively job hunting, as well as those who are currently employed. It omits institutionalized people, like people that are in prison or nursing homes or mental hospitals, and members of the military. It includes all people ages 16 and older, and compares the proportion of those who are working or seeking work outside the home to those who are neither working nor seeking work outside the home. Over the long term, the labor force participation rate has changed based on economic, social, and demographic trends. It rose steadily throughout the second half of the 20th century, peaking at 67.3% in April of 2000. In 2008, as the Great Recession hit, the participation rate entered several years of steep decline, stabilizing at about 63% by 2013. While there are many factors to consider, a falling participation rate means more people simply are unwilling or unable to work. So all of these things compiled together, right? That we're still putting on a lot of jobs, even though there have been some big layoffs in the tech industries. We continue to add jobs. Unemployment is still historically low. And then we have people that are not looking for work, right? So the tight labor market will continue into 2023, and it's going to continue to be a driver in our employee engagement experience. People are going to still be looking for work. The numbers are high as 72% feel that it's still a good time to go out and find a job, right? So these are the challenges that we face in 2023 that we have to address if we're going to retain and keep our talent. So this takes me to kind of the last big topic in 2023 that I think is going to be critical to our success in the employee experience. And we actually did a session on mental health and wellness earlier this year. But mental health and wellness is a pretty big problem in the U.S. Today and really across the globe. But something typically that our HR departments and administrators didn't really have to deal with or felt was our responsibility. While each organization and company takes a little different approach based on resources and other factors, it's important going into the future that we have a strategy for promoting and assisting employees with wellness and mental health. Employee well-being and mental health are top of the mind as human resources leaders attempt to win the war for talent in a historic labor shortage. But there is new territory, and HR leaders are trying to figure out their role, what's appropriate and what employees need most. How much of the employee's mental health and wellness is the responsibility of the employer? Where do they draw the line, and who must help? There are resources that are out there. I invite you to go back to our webinar resources page out on hubengage.com and either look and listen to the webinar or look at some of the resources. But hopefully most of us have employee assistance programs and other professional sources that we can send to our employees. But at the very least, we are starting to have conversations with our employees around mental health, being more cognizant that these issues do exist, and giving them time and ways to deal with that inside and outside of the workplace, because they do ultimately affect work productivity and employee experience. When we talk about human resources, we think about recruitment in general. However, HR professionals are not only tasked to find top talent, recruit and hire, they must also play an important role in ensuring the safety and well-being of employees. As human resource professionals, we must guide our organizations to be transparent, flexible, and resilient in meeting all of our employees' needs. Our comfort level includes optimizing operations for better workflow and performance, but we must also maintain focus on the implications of behavioral health and the gaunt of feelings affecting employees at all levels of the organization. Acknowledging and normalizing these feelings as a genuine and authentic and as an authentic leader helps move the responsibility of HR from simply sharing the phone number for the employee assistance program to actually helping employees better navigate the organization and the business differently. While support for employees is critical to the organization's success in all areas, 2 out of 5 employees don't feel their employers are doing enough to support their well-being, according to a MetLife 2021 benefit survey. And 3 in 4 employees overestimate their employees' mental health and financial health. In addition, 85% of people say their emotional wellness has declined since the COVID-19 outbreak began, and according to a 2020 Harvard Business Survey review. We can't afford to ignore the issue of mental health and wellness in our organizations. In the latest HR Exchange Network State of the HR report, mental health and well-being, 13% was the 3rd biggest challenge behind the labor shortage and retaining talent. In addition, 19% of HR leaders said burnout was the biggest consequence of the pandemic, and burnout and work blurring in personal life were the top challenges of employee engagement. So even though we're not really talking about burnout, and we're not talking about people working from remotely and blurring those lines, those are kind of all lumped up in mental health and wellness. But again, those are all strategies, right, that should be on our mind and should be something that we should be watching, talking to our employees about as far as when it comes to mental health and wellness for 2023. All right, so let's talk about employee best practices. We've talked a lot today about the factors that are affecting the employee experience, the results of employee engagement, and how that affects the employee experience. But I think we need to spend a lot of time on figuring out, how do we know the right things to do? How do we know the right levers to pull? And I think at the end of the day, while it is not a simple process and it can get complicated, I think the best practice is to be figuring out what our employees are telling us and what our employees are saying. And it really comes back to talking to our employees and surveying our employees. It's being able to get that data, see it, and make actionable plans around it. Every organization, I wish I could tell you that every organization is the same and that every one of these levers is the same, but they're not. Everybody's in a different place. Everybody has different strategies and levers to pull. So you really need to look at it holistically and then make a plan of attack based on the data that you're seeing. The first thing that I want to mention is that, and we'll talk a little bit more about in detail, but I think that the biggest or the best survey that you can get to get an overall feel for your employees, the employee experience and employee engagement, is the employee net promoter score. We'll talk again a little bit more in detail about that particular survey. Regular survey scores on job satisfaction. You heard us at the very beginning of the webinar. These are very different concepts, right? Employee engagement and employee satisfaction. But it doesn't mean that it's not important. It is important. And we still need to measure satisfaction. And we need to be able to use the data to see what's driving dissatisfaction. But it's a tool that should be used along with employee engagement. Employer referrals for both recruiting and referring customers. The biggest compliment that you can get from an employee is their willingness to recommend you as a great place to work by, being a referral for recruiting, and then also inviting customers, friends and colleagues to buy or get services from your organization. And it really goes back to the NPS score. And again, we'll talk a little bit more in detail. Employee termination rates. At the end of the day, this is a pretty simple calculation, right? But if you have a high termination rate, people leaving, then you need to peel back the onion and need to find out what's driving those high employee termination rates. It's really not just about leaving, maybe for higher salaries, but what's really driving that? Were there opportunities to give raises that didn't happen? Were there opportunities, professional development that didn't happen? Really trying to understand what's driving those termination rates and making those adjustments in your plans. Productivity metrics, and all of those are going to be a little bit different based on your organization and the type of company that you are. But everybody has productivity metrics that ultimately they can gauge. A lot of times it's going to come back to revenue per employee, but I'm sure there are others within your organization that you could use to determine how you're doing in that area. And then lastly, just overall wellness, right? And this is about work-life balance. This is about access to benefits. This is access to mental and mental health and wellness, having time off, all of the things that go into wellness. So here are some other things that I think we can do to measure the employee experience. There are different types of surveys that are available or that you can use. We talked about a couple of them already, but the employee improvement survey, this is going to give employees a chance to provide constructive criticism about their employer. Employees use this information to strategize ways to improve their organizational process and identify areas of weaknesses. Now, getting this information can be pretty hard to swallow. It's great that we have these tools out there, but we're going to hear things that we don't want to hear, and we have to have the ability to bring them to the forefront, discuss them with employees, discuss them with management, discuss them with leadership, and determine if they're actionable items that are really there that we need to look at. Employee exit surveys, I already mentioned that, but really not only looking back at the termination rate, but really at the reason why people are leaving. Was it about workplace relationships, training, opportunities for growth? Maybe the work processes are not well defined within an organization. There are a number of reasons for people to want to exit the organization, and really trying to understand that. Employee benefit surveys, and that is another one that we really didn't talk about as a continual challenge in 2023, but it is on the top 5 list of employees, as they want great benefits, right? They want to be able to take care of their families. And so that is something that we should regularly be going out and surveying and seeing if we are hitting the mark or we have opportunities. And then professional development surveys. And I think this is a really big one. I think many organizations try to work on professional development, but there's still plans that lack in communication between the employee, between the manager, their coach, and having formal opportunities to not only determine what the employee needs, because this is a very individualistic goal, but also having the budgets and the mechanism to request that type of training, to invest in the employee, and to help them get the professional development. What we're finding with the newer generations, we did a webinar a few months back on generations X, Y, and Z. The newer generations think differently about professional development and about climbing the ladder. It's not necessarily about maybe just having a position of leadership, but it's really around how they're going to continue to develop their skills and improve themselves. So there really needs to be a clear definition there, and you really want to be talking to your employees about these opportunities. So let's talk about that Net Promoter Score, where I think this is the ultimate grade to determine whether or not you have employee engagement and that your employee experience is where it needs to be. As we just mentioned, there are several types of surveys, right, that your organization can use to determine the level of employee satisfaction or employee dissatisfaction. Such things as employee attitude and company culture. But one of the surveys that I find extremely interesting, and it can be very effective in measuring overall employee engagement, is the Employee Net Promoter Score. While I have almost 20 years of human resource experience, a big part of that was in customer service. And we always use the Employee Net Promoter Score, or rather the Net Promoter Score, to judge how our customers think about our products and services. And we've taken that same approach with how employees feel about it. And I think it's very effective. Now, one of the most effective scores a company can receive is a higher positive customer or employee net promoter score. ENPS is a scoring system designed to help employees measure employee satisfaction and loyalty within their organization. So it's very simple. The first question asks employees to rate on a scale from 0 to 10, so it's an 11-point scale, how likely it is they would recommend an organization as a great place to work. The second is an open-ended question asking the employee why they chose the rating that they did. So it's really around getting that feedback, but also getting that ultimate score. Now, the calculation for the Net Promoter Score uses 3 groups to measure the number of employee promoters for the organization. The first group are employees who selected a 0 through 6. These are called detractors. The second group are employees that selected 7 through 8. These are considered passive, and while they're neither detractors or promoters, they are seen as neutral. The last group of employees are those who select 9 through 10 as to how likely they would recommend the organization as a great place to work. Now, the traditional employee net promoter score is really not about an overall percentage like we normally think about from 0 to 100. The score is actually a little bit different, actually works from -100 to 100. But to calculate the ENPS score, we use the following formula. ENPS score equals the percent of promoters minus the percent of detractors. The employee's net promoter score would be a 30 NPS. Okay, so we had 100 employees survey, 50% were promoters, and 20% were detractors, and the remaining 30% were passive. The employee net promoter score would be a 30. Okay, and actually 30 is a pretty good score. The ENPS score can vary widely between industries and from company to company. A general rule of thumb is that a 30 is considered good, and one above 50 is considered excellent. Using the employee net promoter score, using the comment questions to gather reasons on why employees were detractors or promoters can allow you to see what areas you're doing well and what areas need improvement. So let's talk a little bit about what we do with all that survey information, right? So it comes down to be able to ask our employees what they're feeling, asking them for feedback. We should be using anonymous types of surveys whenever possible, because that's going to give you the best results. But before you even conduct your first survey, or even if you're already conducting surveys, you should establish the communication plan with the whole organization, sharing the type and the purpose of the survey, what would be measured and why, multiple communication methods to communicate the information, whether this is by email, text, flyers, SMS posts, maybe posting it on your internet, or maybe even actually sending them out on a mobile application. The idea is to get as much information to your employees as possible. Establish what steps the organization will take to analyze the data and information that will be shared to leadership and to employees, how long it will take, what they can expect to, when can they expect the results, and what action plans are going to take place and when. And so it's not just good to be able to just send surveys out, but people need to have that expectation, right? They're going to want to know what you're going to do with that information and what you're actually doing. The best results are usually gathered when they are known to be anonymous. Depending on the tools that you'll be using, it's important to communicate that clearly to employees. Anonymous surveys are to solicit more candid feedback and ease the worry that the results can be linked back to employees. And then lastly, publish the survey results. While there may be opportunities, pick a short list of opportunities that would be formulated into a plan. Show the initial results and how you plan to improve those results in a reasonable time frame. This will require resurveying employees to see the progress that has been made. And so those of you that have been conducting surveys for a while, you're going to have that baseline. And it's important to use some of the same surveys or some of the same types of surveys so that you can see how those measurements are changing over time, so that you can analyze them and see if there's been increases or decreases based on your efforts or based on your plans. Evaluating the survey data and business intelligence tools. Okay, so not everybody's lucky enough to have automated systems that help do that. I'm pretty lucky that I have automated systems, but even if you have a budget and you're already working or will be working with a survey vendor, you may already have the proper tools to evaluate the data using predefined reports, canned reports, or you have the ability to create custom reporting using an analytical tool that will help you get to the data that you need and even allow you to share that data easily. If you're providing your own evaluation tools, Excel is still a great tool and will be valuable in evaluating your data. Even if you're using a vendor tool and in a reporting engine, make sure that any reporting or data that is provided can be converted to CSV. This will allow you to use Excel statistical tools and allow you to create meaningful pivotal table data for analysis. Excel has very user-friendly pivot table data generators and will allow you to group data in various ways to help you identify trends and patterns in the data. Quantify the results. Quantifying, numeric scores. Results are direct, meaningful ways to express results. Everybody understands and remembers numbers. This also makes it easier to compare data. So for example, show how different respondents answered a survey item as a percentage helps us better understand the overall trend. Look for patterns and trends. And it's important to also group data by segments or groups like locations, employee type, hourly versus salary, benefit eligible employees, etc. This may also allow you to see gaps or differences in certain groups. So look for those trends, not just overall, but using filters in the categories or groups that we just talked about. While we mentioned today the high value of quantifiable data, qualitative data is also very important in getting to the details of certain topics. So don't overlook this type of data and the value that it provides. We spoke about benchmarking, right? And of those that are lucky enough to have already started our surveys, benchmarking provides you the ability to monitor and see how you stand out. Benchmarking also allows you to share results over time and sees the organization's progress. There are a lot of data available by competitors, companies, and industries. Using that data to show your organization how your organization compares, for instance, if your NPS score is 70 and the industry of a large competitor is 30, there's a great story to tell. Measure your organization against itself and other published benchmarks. There are many survey tools out there today that share data from their own customers and kind of give you that benchmark based on industry. Share the results with employees in the organization. Help the organization see the results through the use of visual tools. Using a pie chart. A pie chart is the simplest chart to use that almost everybody understands. You'll need to limit and prioritize the data that you want to see and try to limit to the maximum number of 5 categories. But bar charts can also be used to group specific types of data or to show how particular groups or segments responded to the survey. And then using charts, using line charts are also effective if you want to show results over time or you want to compare data for 2 or more groups or categories. When it's possible, technology for measuring the employee's experience. While it's possible to write and create effective surveys on your own, we highly recommend using a third-party vendor to provide the tools and delivery of the survey or administer the whole survey. Calculate the vendor, carefully evaluate the vendor on features, functionality, delivery methods, analytics, reporting, and price. There are full service providers that will do surveys based on their science and research. They will build, administer, gather results, and provide data, and even analytics of the survey. While you have some input in the type and design of these, they're usually predefined and will be ready out of the box, so to speak. There are also full service providers that offer you tools that you need to deliver the surveys, but you're the administrator. You're responsible for delivering, reviewing the results, and analyzing the data. Many of these providers are giving you dashboards, predefined reports. They're also providing various tools for deployment, and they can help you reach a total audience regardless of how your employees work or what type of connectivity they may have. And then lastly, survey tools that include web applications, mobile applications, kiosks, and data displays have the ability to email and text, have push notifications, or just some of the tools that are available from vendors. Supporting and identifying your unique brand are also huge components when it comes to the tools to deliver the content, surveys, communicate results, and capture additional feedback. You may want your employees to identify the surveys with your brand and with your organization. So many survey vendors have the ability to fully customize the employee experience, download an app that are branded to your organization, and then their strengths, your commitment to your, and this demonstrates the commitment to your employees for your brand. All right, so last poll for the day. Do you have a tool or tools to deploy surveys for yourself today? And so let me just go ahead and launch that. Do you have a tool to deploy surveys? Okay. All right, very, very good. So it looks like most of you are very much ahead of the game. There's some don't know. So definitely understand that. And so, just want to share, when we come to Hub Engage, we definitely want to be able to share information that's important to you, that you can take back to your organizations. I will say quickly that Hub Engage does have a survey tool that does many of the things that we talked about, that whether you choose our tool or not, I do want you to know that that is something that is available. And so if you're looking for information on how to do that, or you're looking for some help on how you might deploy this, please reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. Our tools also include many of the factors that you're looking for in a vendor, which is providing analytics, ways to deploy those surveys easily to your employees and your stakeholders, and then of course being able to use the data. So let's just talk about in conclusion, at the end of the day, while redefining the employee experience sounds like a really big deal, it really is just continuing what we working on as employers today, right? And some of us are better at some things than others. But we should be looking at the hot topics for employees in HR departments. This is something that will need to be reviewed individually for your own organization. Maybe some of you have good plans in place. Maybe some of you are currently addressing these issues. Maybe some of you have opportunities. Many of us already have knowledge on where we may already be falling short. It will be important to back that up with employee data and feedback and be able to present a solid plan to management and the rest of the organization. And even if your teams aren't completely bought in on it, maybe your leadership and management aren't completely bought in on it, I can tell you from experience that having the data and being able to recommunicate that on an effective basis can help change minds and help people understand that these are important things that we need to do for our employees and where we have opportunities. Conducting surveys and developing action plans is not always a quick process. While there may be some low-hanging fruit that we can take opportunities on, generally HR and admins are administering surveys over several months and quarters to identify trends and opportunities to react to feedback. Regular surveys help gather useful and actionable information, but there are other ways to get direct feedback from employees. During coaching and one-on-ones, performance evaluations, affinity groups or other employee groups, like maybe culture teams, that can help not only bring attention to issues, but also help implement and develop opportunities and participate in those solutions. So at the end of the day, it's not really all about just survey data and making actionable items and showing results, but it's really about getting everybody involved and making sure that your managers are trained and that your employees are trained, that there are mechanisms to give feedback. Hopefully those mechanisms are easy and allow opportunities for people to do that, maybe anonymously, but it can still come from one-on-ones, feedback from performance evaluations and maybe why they're not performing as well as they should, and then having the mechanism to take that additional information from the front line, from your managers and supervisors, and adding it to the survey data that you have. We're at time almost. I wanted to take a few minutes to open up the chat line for questions that you may have for me. I have not seen anybody chat, even when confirming that you could see the screen. So I'm a little bit worried since I'm the only panelist today that I can see your chats. But if you do, please type a question in, and we'll leave a couple of minutes to see if there's any questions or tools that you need. Again, like all the webinars, if you have questions about the resources or you want links to any of the tools that I mentioned or statistics, please reach out to me. I'll be glad to share a copy of the presentation. In the next few days, we'll be presenting certificates by email. But if you haven't heard from me, please reach out to me and I will get you your CE credit and activity IDs for your PDCs. All right, I don't see any questions. Okay, so here's something I am seeing an answer. Thanks for your insight. We'd love to know your thoughts on gamification strategies to increase employee engagement and retention. Absolutely. I think these are going to be a huge advantage to being able to get employees to engage. So the question was, do you see gamification as a technique to improve employee engagement? And more importantly, be able to get feedback from people. So yes, I think that's a big element. I know that I talk to employers every day that are offering incentives for feedback. And I know that seems, I think as HR professionals and management, we kind of cringe for having to ask people or reward people for the feedback. But we have to find ways to engage them. I don't think that people or employees on purpose don't want to participate. I think they just get used to that rigor where they're getting the survey via email or via text message, and they become complacent. Or maybe they haven't seen feedback yet from management or HR on what's being done with that. So maybe they're not inclined. But if you can put that in front of them, if you can put that in a strategy for gamification, or if you can include rewards and points which systems do, to claim for a future reward. All those things are helpful to be able to get participation for those surveys and to get employee engagement. I'll just leave you with this. I know that I get surveys all the time from HR vendors and things of that nature where, yeah, I'm busy. I don't have a lot of time. They want my feedback, but maybe they're willing to offer me a $5 or $10 or $20 gift card to for you to give candidate feedback around their application. And it gives you a little, bit of reward for your time. It does work, right? At least it does for me. So definitely include that in your strategies. I think that's a great call out. Thank you, Kirk, for that call out. All right, honored that you participated today. Thank you so much, and look for upcoming webinars on various topics through HubEngage, and you can do that at hubengage.com in the resources webinar section. Hope you have a great day. Thank you.